My wife, 35, became selfish and distant because she was secretly seeing our neighbor. I let her distance herself from me, and made a decision to focus on me, and what I needed and enjoyed. The marriage had become a burden on my shoulders, and I enjoyed my time alone. Our stupid relationship clouded my days and made me feel like I had to solve a giant metaphorical jigsaw puzzle before I could eat or sleep. At the time, I still didn't know why my wife pulled away and limited our conversations to who was taking the trash out that night. I was outside gardening, trying to keep myself positive when she came outside the house, smiled at someone I couldn't see, then looked around first before walking towards them. I peeked around the corner to watch her and see if I could tell who it was. It was our much older neighbor. He must have been at least 10 years older than my wife. My stomach completely flopped when he planted a huge kiss on her and tapped her butt when she walked away. The fact that she was cheating on me with someone so close explained why she wasn't on her phone all the time. She would just go outside all the time for walks. A while ago, she stopped cooking for me. It was really annoying because I was a terrible chef and I tried asking her to make me stuff, but she always had an excuse and said it would be better if we ate separately due to work schedule conflicts. It wasn't that much of a difference, she just wanted me to starve. So I took the time to cook lasagna in the kitchen, leaving no space for her to make dinner for a 3-hour window. She was growing impatient, so I took this time to tell her it wasn't even for me to eat, it was for someone else. Of course, this made her wonder if I was making it for her, so she asked who it was for, and I said the older neighbor next door who was moving away. She looked confused and immediately asked if I meant Tim AP. I said yeah, and I thought he already told her when she was outside with him. She turned red and looked at me but then walked away. I don't think she cared very much if I saw. So it was good I had been distancing myself too, and chose not to worry about her or our relationship. I finally had enough happen to motivate me to move out. I was being disrespected and she did not care. There's no repairing a relationship when one person's unwilling and sleeping with a neighbor. I know she was sleeping with him because I hid in our house one day when she had him come over to bang. I recorded the audio pretty clearly and used it to file for divorce. She told me she never thought I'd actually move out or file for divorce, and she felt bad we ended how we did. That interaction with her was mild compared to 3 weeks later when AP unexpectedly passed away. Then she was hysterical, asking me to take her back because he was gone. I told her I'd have to be one gullible son of a gun if I took her up on that offer. She was no longer the woman or wife I desired, and I was going to find one. She tried to spread rumors about me in her anger, but few of her friends knew the truth and argued with her. It started this string of comments and insults against my wife's character. After she made a few enemies, she deleted the post that was intended to garnish sympathy for her. Sadly, 3 weeks after AP passed away, my wife found out she was pregnant. I knew it was not my child, so she was pregnant with a deceased man. She had her mom move in with her to help afford the house and raise the baby. It was not an arrangement she was happy with. She has no privacy and certainly a rough dating life ahead of her. She felt like it was partially my fault she was in this situation, and I thought she was crazy. I wasn't the one that cheated, and it certainly wasn't up to me to reconnect and communicate with her. I haven't felt the need to start dating again. I've just been settling into my new place and making it my next home. The time I spent distancing before the divorce really helped to prepare me for this step. Wow, OP. I am sorry your wife pushed you away for someone else and didn't even have the decency to tell you, or have a conversation about breaking up, or what was actually wrong between the two of you. Sometimes the hardest conversations have to be had if there's any chance for reconciliation or a good resolution. If someone is to be ready to commit to a relationship, they must be willing to say what's on their mind no matter what their spouse will think. Obviously, be considerate of each other's feelings, and don't say anything to hurt the other person. Just tell them how you feel, and what you believe needs to be resolved. If someone isn't mature enough to listen and consider the other's perspective without judgment or hostility, they may not be mature enough to have a committed romantic relationship. Thank you for sharing your story of hardship and personal growth. Now let's get into today's second story. My wife, 47, and I, 43, had a wonderful relationship. We trusted each other, talked, cooked together, shared our incomes, and these things never changed. She knew she was extremely talented and smart, but she was humble about it. She didn't like women that loved staring in the mirror camera on social media or hearing their own voices. I never noticed anything weird about her or anything I would have changed. I appreciated her and counted on our long conversations every day. We were married for 20 years and had one teenager depending on us. I knew our relationship was the perfect example for him to watch, and it made me proud. That changed the moment someone told me my wife was cheating on me. It was 25 minutes after she left for a place she volunteers at. The neighbor across from our apartment knocked on my door and said he was standing on the porch for a smoke when he saw my wife kiss the man that gave her a ride somewhere. I started pouring sweat and asked him if he was sure it was my wife. He said yes, of course. He said it wasn't the first time he saw her get in this guy's car, but it was the first time he saw a romantic gesture. I knew it was the Christian married man my wife carpooled with for volunteering. I couldn't believe he'd stoop so low and go behind his wife's back knowing the woman he was wooing was married as well. This guy needed to face the consequences. I set up a small security camera so the next time she went with him in his car I'd see what they did. It worked like a charm. I caught another bold kiss right in front of our apartment complex. What was my wife thinking? You don't just start kissing other people when you've been married for 20 years and have a teenage son to be an example for. When my wife got home I showed her the video. I'm pretty sure she had to change her pants. She was mortified. She tried to say it didn't mean anything. It was just supposed to be like a friendly greeting kiss, but I wasn't buying that. I told her she had to stop volunteering so I could keep an eye on her. She agreed wholeheartedly and I agreed not to tell her son anything yet. I certainly dreaded the thought of having to tell him his mom and I were getting a divorce. So we went everywhere together for 3 months. Then she started asking me if she could go to various places real quick, like the library, food store, gas station, a lunch run, or whatever else she thought was innocent sounding but disinteresting enough for me not to go. I knew she was trying to get me used to her going places without me again. I waited a while before I followed her to the gas station. She didn't need cigarettes or anything and the car had a full tank of gas. Just as I thought she met up with AP, she got in his car and they sped off. I was barely able to keep up. I thought for sure they'd notice my car, but neither of them did. I took pictures of her going inside his house, then drove home. I walked around outside while I called the church and asked the receptionist for AP's landline number. When I called at first, no one answered. I waited 1 hour before calling again. By now my son asked where his mom was. I told him I wasn't sure but probably volunteer again. So now I was lying to our son and she was going to cause us to divorce. So much for being our son's wonderful example of a married couple. I knew he could still learn something from all of this when he was older, but I was bitter at the time. He went up to his room and AP's wife answered when I called the second time. I told her she wasn't going to want to hear what I had to tell her, and it would probably be better if her husband wasn't around. She said he wasn't and pressed me to go on. I told her the truth and mentioned the proof I had. She was completely blown away. Just like me, her husband's behavior never changed and they had a good marriage. I apologized and sent her the proof. AP's wife agreed to help me by playing a role in a plan to really get back at them. She showed her cheating husband the evidence but told him he could keep the house if he signed divorce papers immediately. He agreed, but the divorce papers she put together said she could keep the house. He wasn't very observant, so she pretended to move out, staying in my apartment while her divorce papers were finalized and AP moved my ex into his house. My son was very understanding when I explained that she really needed a place to stay. My divorce was also finalized and the landlord took my wife's name off the apartment since she thought she was moving in with AP happily ever after. I could not believe my wife didn't care more about leaving her teenage son to live with just his father. She didn't take the time to talk with him or anything. She heard him, I know. He told her she did, and when she finally called him full of shame. That was after AP's wife returned with papers ordering them to vacate the premises. My wife begged me to let her come back. I overheard my son on the phone with her telling her he didn't want her to come back just to leave again, and he knew I wouldn't and shouldn't take her back. He was very mature, but I hated that he was so involved in this just because my wife needed a place to stay now. So since they had nowhere to go for a while, they stayed in a hotel, and then AP got an opportunity to stay with someone, but he couldn't take my ex with him. He left without hesitation, giving her $50 as a parting gift. What a loser. She was left in a bad place. I think she started sleeping in the church, but no one told me anything about her and she wouldn't talk to me or our son about her situation. I know she was feeling the consequences of losing the long-term family she helped create. I hope to hear this stops people from cheating. Wow, OP. I am sorry your wife took advantage of the trust you had in her by starting an affair with another person you should have been able to trust. It's hard to feel sorry for them when they've made such terribly selfish decisions. Why couldn't they have both humbled themselves and simply honored their vows, spouses, and children? It's terrible how easy it is for some people to not care and break the hearts of people dearest to them. No one should have to face this betrayal after dedicating themselves to someone for 20 years. I know you'll find hope in your recovery. Remember to live life moment to moment and let go of the things you can't control. I sincerely wish you luck and genuine love with a wise partner. Thanks for sharing your story. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hi everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark. I hope you all are having a fantastic day or evening. In today's story, OP found out about his wife's affair and got instant revenge the same day he found out about it. Now, let's get into today's story to find out what happened. Hello, for the context of this story, I'll call myself Ben and my then wife Linda. This is my story from 6+ years ago about how my marriage ended within a day. I, 32, was working as a chemical engineer and my wife of 2 years, Linda, 27, worked as a nurse assistant at the time. We didn't have children, but we were planning to start a family soon. We were financially secure. I made around $140K a year and my wife made around $30K. She was also in school, which I was paying for. We owned a house and had savings. I thought we were happy and content with our lives. I had noticed that in the weeks leading up to D-Day that Linda was spending far more time on her phone than usual. I also noticed when she unlocked her phone that she had added a passcode, something which she never had before. We never had a reason to have passcodes before on our phones since I never used hers or she never did mine. We never snooped on each other's phones ever. However, I didn't think much of it at the time since she had never given me any reason to doubt her. Fast forward to D-Day, me and Linda had escaped to the lake house my family owned a few days prior, which was located about 1.5 hours from home. We were planning on spending some quality time together since we had both gotten a bit busy with our careers, school, etc. In hindsight, I did notice that Linda was a little preoccupied during this stay. However, I was still unaware. Her nephew had been diagnosed with leukemia a few weeks ago when the entire family was buzzing with the news, so I thought perhaps it was that. She also seemed to be texting more than usual as well, but I thought maybe it was her sister relaying news and asking for advice regarding her son. On the second day since we arrived, Linda had started working on her special Moroccan dish that she had been excited about for some time. She asked me to look the preparation method up again on the web, and I do. But my battery is about to die, so I go in and plug it into the charger. She then unlocks her phone and tosses it to me, and asks me to look it up on her phone. I search for it and read it out loud. Just as I finished reading it and was about to turn the screen off and get locked out of her phone permanently, a silent WhatsApp notification pops up. I find it weird since I didn't know Linda even had WhatsApp, and I automatically click on it. I wasn't expecting to see anything incriminating or wasn't even trying to snoop. It was more like a reflex action more than anything, and I opened a chat log between her and the guy. He goes, "How's it going?" Then he's typing. Then as I'm staring at it, he sends another one, "Already missing you." My entire vision blurs and I feel the room spinning for about 3 seconds. I hurriedly grabbed her phone and head off to the den. My wife is still preparing for her special dish, blissfully unaware that I was close to seizing just a few feet over. I scroll through their endless chat. There's flirting, there's exchanging nudes, there's a lot of talking about the sex they had or are planning on having, etc. They've also professed their love for each other a few times. After about 10 minutes of scrolling, I've had enough. I decide on the spot that my marriage is over. After reading through all that, there's no way I'll ever want her in my life, much less my bed. I tried changing her password but fail, so I changed the screen sleep time of her phone to never, then grab my car keys and her phone and head out. On the way, I utter something about grabbing some toiletries that I had forgotten to bring along from a store half a kilometer away. She says something back, I barely register what it is. As I get behind the wheel, I feel a strange sense of serenity as the fog lifts and my mind clears. I stop shortly after out of reach of the lake house and text the guy we're coming home. Ben has a work emergency. Let's meet at their usual hangout at 12. And I drive. I drive for nearly 2 hours, but it feels like an eternity. I arrived at their usual hangout, which is a coffee shop close to her school. I wait in the car to kill the time till 12. At around 11:45 the guy arrives. I recognize him from his selfies. He looks young, younger than my wife too, and fresh. I immediately get out and head inside fast. As soon as he enters, I do too. And I wrap my arm around his shoulders. He jumps and turns his head towards me. My face is literally inches from his, and his pupils dilate as he recognizes me. Whatever he was about to say died on his lips. I grip his shoulders tight and direct him to a nearby table. He looks like he's about to have a panic attack. I calmly take her phone and press record and ask him to start from the beginning. He starts to protest, but I say he's blown my marriage up. This is the least he could do. They were introduced by one of their mutual friends. They went from acquaintances to friends really fast, and within weeks they were in bed. This had been going on for 10 months. All this time she had been, and I had been talking about starting a family. She was screwing him. He went on and on about their escapades, the lies, the deceit, but I just tuned it out for the rest of the time. I had heard enough. After he finishes, he starts apologizing. He's sorry he tore my marriage apart, but he's in love with her and he sees a future with her. She's the one. I tell him fine, he can have her. I have no use for her anymore. I don't want someone's leftovers. Then I thank him. I thank him for helping me see what a skank she is before I put a bun in her oven. I thank him for the 18 years of child support I will be paying. I then tell him her location and ask him to go get her. Then I head out. I head straight home. While on my way, Linda calls me from the landline and she's in hysterics. She asks where I was, that she was worried sick I had gotten into an accident. She tried to call me but couldn't find her phone, but then remembered there's a landline. I calmly tell her I'm on my way home and asked her to pack our shit and come home straight away. She freaks out and starts rambling, but I hang up. She tries calling several times, but I don't answer. She then calls her own phone, probably to locate it, thinking it's still in the house, but I let it ring too. I get home and get busy. I call my best bud and bawl like a freaking baby. He was a solid support and he says he'll make some calls around and get back to me. Meanwhile, I screenshot the chats between her and her lover and send them to my phone. I also send all the pics and videos of them. Then I changed her Facebook status to single. I then create a post on her profile quoting one of her texts to the guy. So what's the lie I'm going to tell Ben today so I can come screw you, with a heart eyes emoji. Then I head over to and add one of their selfies where they look intimate to her story. I activate the notification sounds and leave her phone on the tabletop. It doesn't take very long for the phone to buzz nonstop with messages and reactions from confused family and friends. I figure Linda must already be on the way back and her lover on the way to the lake house if he's actually going to fetch her. Either way, they're going to miss each other. Then my friend gets back from his lawyer friend who's ready to clear up a bit of his schedule to create a wiggle room for me. So I head out immediately and my friend arrives too. House is in my name and so are the savings. As per the infidelity clause, I won't have to pay her alimony. Proving the infidelity would be a walk in the park. I'll be walking away from the marriage pretty much unscathed, except for the 2 years I wasted on this woman and PTSD. When I head home, my soon-to-be ex-wife is on the front porch with all our luggage lying around. As soon as she sees me, she goes absolutely nuts, asking me what the frick is wrong with me leaving her like that, etc. I unlock the door and quietly step inside and she follows, rambling at 1,000 words per minute. She finally gets in my face and yells at me. I take her notification-clogged phone from the table, open the audio recording of her lover, and hand it over to her. To say she was shocked is an understatement. She sinks to the floor and starts screaming that it wasn't what I think it is, that her lover is mistaken. It didn't mean anything and that I'm the love of her life and all that BS. I tell her she has 2 hours to pack her stuff and get out. She wails at first, then clings to my leg and begs me to not ruin our family for a simple mistake, and then turns nasty. She says I can't kick her out because this is her house too, and I remind her the prenup with its infidelity clause. She kicks and screams for some time, but I don't wait around. In the span of the next few hours, I inform her family, my family, her friends, her colleagues, etc. Since the prenup is solid, I figured it's important to get my narrative out first, since I have no doubt she's going to spin some sort of sob story and make me out to be an abuser or something. So long story short, I serve her within the week and 6 months later our divorce is finalized. Soon after I kicked her out, She moved in with her lover, and they lasted a solid 2 months before she set herself up in her sister's guest room. From what I heard at the time, she was let go of her job and was taking a break from school till she scraped some dollars to pay for it. The final time I saw her in court, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked like she had aged a decade in the span of 6 months and looked ragged and tired. 3 years post the ordeal, I met the woman of my dreams and married her. I'm now a proud father to a toddler. As for my ex, I do not know her whereabouts. However, wherever she is, I hope she's living well. I have long let go of the anger and resentment I felt toward her. She's only a minuscule part of my past now. I know, like mine and her family's did, most of you listeners probably would not approve of the way I handle things. Why couldn't I just forgive her this one time? Why couldn't I give her one last chance? Why did I rush into a divorce? But for me at the time and even now, the course of actions I followed makes the most sense. I did not and still do not feel like cheating is something I can just sweep under the rug and move forward with life. Just isn't. Anyways, thank you everybody for reading my story. OP, I have so much respect for the way you handled this. You repaid for her college and basically funding her life while also planning for a family. But all that time she was shagging another dude. She made the bed so she needs to lie in it. You're extremely lucky this happened. What are the odds she gets knocked up by the dude, and you'd be tricked into raising an affair kid as your own? I wish you the best with your situation, OP, and hope you are able to recover. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed the story, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on today's story. Hey folks, welcome back to my channel Relationship Haven. My name is Gary, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day or evening, wherever you are. In today's story, OP found out his wife cheated on him with a female coworker, and then had the audacity to move next to OP as a neighbor after marrying the affair partner. As soon as she did this, karma happened immediately, and now her life is a disaster. I also have another story to share that involves a guy whose wife cheated on him with a man she had previously dated and hadn't seen in 11 years. Now let's get into today's stories. I was cheated on in 2012 and 2013. My ex and I had started dating in 2007 and got engaged in 2008, but didn't get married until 2013. In the meantime, we bought a house together in 2012. A few weeks after we bought the house together, she started an emotional affair behind my back with another woman, a woman she occasionally interacted with at her job. I didn't find out about the affair until a year later. Around late May 2013, she and the affair partner added each other as Facebook friends and started flirting daily via Facebook messaging. The affair partner was markedly less discreet than my fiancé was, so I definitely noticed the affair partner's online presence. The affair partner was a mother of 6 children by 4 different men, and most of her kids had pretty severe problems due to a pretty terrible upbringing. The affair partner was also extremely severely uneducated, unemployed, and totally unemployable due to having all these kids to take care of. At the end of June 2013, we were finally ready to marry, and I started excitedly planning our wedding. However, my fiancée said she didn't want to be involved in the planning. She said she just wanted to show up at the actual wedding day and marry me and not have to do anything else. In September of 2013, I found out she had arranged to meet up with the affair partner in person under the pretense of celebrating or consoling the affair partner for becoming a grandmother under less than ideal circumstances. As soon as they met up, they were inseparable. They found excuses to keep meeting in person every single day that week, and it became obvious to me within the first 2 or 3 days that something was going on between them that should not be going on. She trickle-truthed me for a few weeks, but I asked her to choose between us. I desperately wanted her to choose me. Instead, she chose the affair partner. She asked for 2 weeks to make arrangements for a new place to live, and I said okay. I assumed she would move out and get an apartment alone somewhere like a halfway sane person, but no. She got her affair partner to kick out the father of the youngest of her 6 children, and then a day or 2 after the kids watched the baby daddy move out, my ex moved directly from the house we had bought together into the affair partner's house. Barely 1 week after that, so 3 weeks after calling off our own wedding, she legally married the other woman. At this point in time, I actually felt sorry for her, because it was becoming clear to me that she was making an even bigger mess of her own life than she had managed to make of mine. Even though she was pretty much my worst enemy by then, Being legally married to the utter train wreck of a woman she'd chosen as her affair partner was an even worse fate than I would ever have wished on my worst enemy. So although I was badly hurt by the manner in which she had dumped me, I didn't necessarily bear any major ill will. I just wanted to finish the process of getting her out of my life so I could move on and never have to see her again. Soon after I had bought out my ex's share of the house that we had bought together, the two of them bought a house within 500 feet of it. They moved in within sight of my own front yard. The two of them and the affair partner's 6 children. They decorated their front yard like the newlyweds they were, covering it with giant heart-shaped garden art. And they sat outside on their front porch together for about 16 hours a day every day where I couldn't avoid having to see them together. I can only imagine what horrible parents they must have been, but I know they didn't seem to spend much time at all indoors. I was absolutely certain that part of my ex's goal in moving in so close to my house was to force me to let her back into my life in some capacity. I had moved away from all my own friends and family when I moved in with my ex, and I didn't know many people other than my ex in the town where I was now living, so it would have been convenient in some ways to be able to ask my ex to do little things like watch my pets when I was out of town, and I had a strong feeling that my ex was hoping for exactly that. I also strongly suspected that at some point my ex's marriage would fall apart, and she'd try to finagle her way back into a relationship with me again as a result. She'd always been pretty brilliant at manipulating me, so I was terrified that she might actually somehow succeed at manipulating me all over again and manage to waste even more years of my life than she already had. So I put a great deal of effort into building up stronger emotional antipathy toward her. I hadn't started out hating her guts when she cheated on me, but I consciously trained myself to hate her guts because I didn't otherwise trust myself to be able to resist her efforts to come back into my life in one way or another and cause even more harm to me than before. The threat of that is over now. I'm very happily married to someone else, and I've finally sold the house that I bought with my ex. My ex's affair partner cheated on her and dumped her for a man. I live 50 miles away from my ex now, and with any luck, I should finally never have to see her ever again. But the anger, all the anger that I deliberately built up to protect myself from any effort she might make to come back into my life is still hanging around. It's not so useful to me now, but it remains a black cloud over my head. It interrupts my thoughts and puts me into angry moods when I could be having the time of my life. How do you get past this? How do you turn down the volume of the long-standing rage and fury, so you can be more attuned to enjoying your new life instead of wasting any more time on your old one? Wow, OP, the fact that your wife had the audacity to move next to you is shocking. I do agree with you that her moving right next to you was an attempt to win you back, and boy, did it absolutely backfire on her. I'm glad you were able to get out of that situation and have moved on with your life. Continue to work on yourself and become the best version of you. I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Let's now get into the second story for today. Well, never thought I'd be online asking strangers for help and support, but I don't know what else to do or where to turn at this point. I just found out yesterday that my wife of 8 years cheated on me a few days ago. We have 2 boys together, one almost 7 and one almost 3. We were high school sweethearts, but our emotions were too strong back then, so we broke up back then due to arguments over typical high school BS. We were broken up for 2 years total, give or take. When we reconnected, she had just left a relationship that lasted less than half of the time we were apart, and I had been celibate by choice and single the whole time. We hooked up the night we reconnected. She got kicked out of her parents' house the next day, but called her immediate ex instead of me because she said she didn't want to run back to me with the drama, etc. Understandable. I heard from her later in the day that she got kicked out, and I picked her up from his house. We've lived and been together ever since. Now fast forward to Tuesday, July 5th. We haven't been great together lately, mostly due to stress. One day I went to work and a little after lunch she called saying her aunt wants to keep the boys for a couple of days if possible, and she wanted to know if I was okay with it. Honestly, I don't know if it was my gut or instinct or intuition, but I didn't really want the kids to go and couldn't give much of a reason for it. I get off work after a pretty long day driving for most of it, and they were all ready to go. I wish I had sucked it up and taken them now, but I had no reason to suspect anything and I was tired, so I said, "You go ahead, just let me know when you get there and leave, etc." No big deal, I thought. I relaxed at home and invited my youngest brother over to hang out and play a game together. She left with our kids around 7-ish when I got home and returned after midnight. I didn't think much of it as I was under the impression she was with family and our kids for the barbecue they had then headed home after. On her way home, she swung by a park that she hadn't told me about and cheated on me with the guy she left almost 11 years earlier, the one she had left before we reconnected. The next day I didn't work and we hung out a little more. But I noticed she was a little more distant than normal, and didn't want me touching her much. I should have noticed then that something was up. The following day I worked again and she made plans to pick up the kids. I got off work and came home, but forgot to let her know I was heading home. I went back and saw she was messaging someone on Facebook Messenger. I then caught a glimpse of the name as she moved her phone out of sight. When I asked who it was, she said it was her aunt and then quickly attempted to hide the phone. Being together this long, we have had all of each other's accounts and passwords, bank accounts and everything. After seeing the name again, I realized it was the ex from years ago, who she went no contact with after he messaged her at 3 a.m. on Valentine's Day after we were back together a few months in the beginning. I started screenshotting for proof in case she deleted it, and it turned out they had been talking for almost a month or so. The next night she dropped our kids off while I was trying to work out the details of her stopping by on her way to get our kids. I then stepped outside before she had a chance to pull out of the driveway and told her I would go get the boys. I went in to change out of work clothes while screenshotting as much as I could find on her phone. She then noticed from the sound of the screenshots that something wasn't right and asked what I was doing. I didn't reply at first, but then said, "So when were you going to let me know you just cheated on me?" Then came home like it was nothing, lying to my face, saying you love me and kissing me. I won't ever forget the reaction she had. No shocked look or no I'm sorry, no anger either. She had the audacity to ask me what I was doing on her phone anyways, and that it was none of my business. That was the moment my world began crashing down around me. I took her phone to prevent any deleting or warning of the affair partner. We then argued on the way to her aunt's and she started getting physical when we got back home. It completely blindsided me and I had never in my life cried so hard or been so angry, much less at the same time. I found out he messaged her and she actively chose to respond knowing she was a married woman. Supposedly, she had no intention to cheat, but less than a month later, she had gone through with it completely and showed no remorse or guilt until after getting caught. At this point, I didn't know what to think. It all feels very planned and like this was obviously the goal, otherwise why talk to him at all, much less hide it from me for a month. Update. I should also add she has been a stay-at-home mom for 7 years or so, other than a stint at a gas station before we got pregnant with our second. She did eventually show remorse once the defensive posture was lost, and I guess she realized how huge this was. I still don't know what to do though. Wow. What a sad story to hear. OP, in your case, the realization here is that a spouse will never forget their affair partner. You thought you had a secured and safe marriage only to find out your wife hadn't gotten over an ex that she hadn't been with for 11 years. The fact that she is showing no remorse means you know what to do. Expose her affair to her family, lawyer up, seek counseling and go no contact. Best of luck to you, OP. Thanks for taking your time to listen to today's stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's stories. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. One day my wife was invited to go to the movies. She really enjoyed any time she got out of the house because we had a very clingy 3-year-old boy. I was sympathetic and I made sure to share child duties, but I couldn't really help that I was the one out working and socializing with other adults. I knew it bothered her to give up her career, but we did what we could to keep each other going. We've been married for 7 years. She was all I had and already I couldn't picture living my life without her. Maybe it was because we were meant to have our son together, but I know now that it wasn't because we were meant to be. On movie nights she went with girls she used to work with. I was sitting with my son in the living room taking pictures of him when I decided to check Facebook. I was friends with one of my wife's work friends and she posted a picture of all the girls in attendance that night with text that said PSR you couldn't make it out with us tonight and my wife's name was tagged. I felt my vision spin while panic set in. I didn't find out she was cheating, only that she was lying about where she went. I tried calling her phone and was very disappointed to hear it ringing upstairs. It was under her pillow. I thought that was an odd place for her to put her phone, and then I started to panic that she ran away from me. Since I was desperate for a clue, I got on her computer. I found the note on the desktop and I was beyond scared at this point. It said in case something went wrong she thought it was a good idea to put this on her laptop. She planned to meet her online friend at the hotel and casino about an hour away from her house. She put a different phone number than the one I had programmed. I called 5 times before she answered, sounding very worried that it was me. When I said it was me, a long pause followed. She said she was sorry. I asked if she was apologizing for cheating on me. Another painfully long pause. I couldn't believe this. She said yes and started crying. She said my voice was disarming and she didn't think I was going to find out so fast. I started calling her a lot of bad names while she tried to reason with me. I asked where she was and she said she was still in the casino. I didn't know whether I should tell her off and just hang up or tell her to come back home and we could pretend this never happened. I asked her who she cheated on me with and she sighed. Suddenly she shouted no and I heard AP's voice. He said he waited a long time to meet her in person, but now she was ready to leave her boring life with me to be with him. My heart was shattered. I had real chest pain because of this phone conversation. I told him to be a man and put my wife back on the phone so we could discuss arrangements for our 3-year-old son. As he handed the phone back to her, I heard him tell her I wanted to talk about her son, and she was just really quiet. She asked when she could see him next and I started screaming. I said that she was a terrible, terrible wife and mother, and she didn't deserve to see either of us ever again. I told her to never come back to me or expect any love from me ever again. I heard her voice before I hung up. I told her family about everything in one long Facebook message and changed the locks on our doors. I realized that over the past 6 years I had anxiety about this very thing happening. I actually had visions of needing to change the locks when my wife cheated so that she couldn't just come back into my life and trick me into forgiving her. I refused to be like my father, who let my mother walk all over him and come in and out of my life. She tried calling me 7 times before I blocked her, so I considered 7 my lucky number to get through this ordeal. It only took my wife a week to try coming back. She left a note on the door saying she just needed her stuff, but she said she was sorry more than once and that she missed me. On July 14th, my lawyer called back with good news about the divorce, and just 7 short weeks later I had my day in court to prove my wife was guilty of abandoning me and our son for AP. She admitted she had a long-distance relationship with him for at least 2 years. When my ex called me one evening months after the divorce, she said she made a huge mistake. She said it was the biggest mistake she would ever make in her entire life, and she didn't know if she could move on from it. She said she never should have started talking to AP because I was the one she was meant to have a family with. She said she already lost all the feelings she had for AP. But now she was trapped in his house with nowhere else to go. Her parents and a few distant relatives were never really involved in her life to begin with, which is why starting our family meant so much to us. I hope she regrets her actions enough to never do this again to anyone. 4 years later, and I'm remarried with a 7-year-old son and a baby on the way. My ex-wife from what feels like an eternity ago called me. I didn't answer it, but she left me a voicemail that said she was just wondering how I was doing, and wanted to see if we could get together sometime because she finally ended her miserable relationship with AP, and got a low-income housing apartment but can barely afford it. She's really been struggling with paying her bills, and the affair she committed serves as a daily reminder of how she ended up in this situation. So her life took a 4-year-long detour, 6 years if you count, when she first started talking to AP, and she still ended up worse off than me. Your ex put you through hell. She set you up to believe she was going to the movies when she was meeting her AP of 2 years. She probably hoped she'd be able to keep returning home without you knowing what was really going on, but AP snapped the phone because he wanted your woman. Your wife already made her decision, but by lying and cheating on you, so you did the right thing when you told her off and made it clear she would not be getting another chance from you. She absolutely blew it, and I'm glad that feeling got to her. I can tell from your account that she was very remorseful, but that doesn't mean she deserves to ever be trusted again. Thank you for sharing your story, OP. You certainly deserve a woman that will always choose you, openly communicate her feelings, listen to you and treat you with respect. I wish you and your family the best of luck in life. Now let's get into our second story for today. Here is my story. First off, I want to start by saying that a woman can go through criticism for the man she's chosen to marry. Those criticisms and concerns about her husband may or may not be true. Either way, you should always be sure to remember that the man under the microscope is a human too, and he might not like certain things about himself either, like any undesirable physical feature. And don't get me started on unwanted man emotions like aggression, anger, frustration, shame, fear, anxiety, or sadness. I know these are just normal emotions that everyone experiences, but if a man shows one or more of these too frequently, Maybe he's just a person in need of help. Let me tell you what people said to my wife, which in turn made her slowly start to despise me. She started going to a women's group where they each got to talk about their feelings and how life was going at home. I was at home with our teenage kids. We were married for 17 years. My wife hadn't ever physically cheated on me up until this point, but she did have an emotional affair years ago with her stepbrother that I'd rather not talk about. I guess these women encouraged her to really let all the complaints she had about her family come to the surface. My wife knew I had a really messed up childhood. She knew I didn't know my father and my mother was neglectful, but yet she didn't think for a second that I didn't want to frequently experience anger, frustration, shame, sadness, or fear. When we first got married, she helped me through these emotions, but after so many years she started to lose faith in me. She started to believe the ladies in her group and the lies my mother always told me, that I was unworthy and a mistake. What she didn't realize, though, was that she was proving herself to be just that. She was so disgusted with me that she decided she deserved a one-night stand after 17 years of marriage. She was terrible at lying, though, and not very sneaky. I quickly figured out where to find her, and she got a real show of my aggression. In front of all the neighboring people that could hear me through their walls, I basically attacked AP. I wanted to attack her, but for some reason I felt like I couldn't. I spent a night in jail, but I guess AP had more of a heart than my wife because he didn't press charges. I couldn't believe she was convinced I was the one with the problems, that didn't deserve to have unconditional love from her. She had some kind of obsession with her own family, and it didn't paint a pretty picture in court. Our teenagers also found out what she did, and they were disgusted. They'll always remember as a fact that their mom cheated on their dad with her own uncle. I only hope they see her as an example of what not to be. From their reaction to it, I think that's how they're going to take it. They live with me full-time and have awkward visits with their mom. I am most grateful for the fact that I was able to take custody of my kids and give them a safe place to live without the instability their mother accused me of. It's been 7 years since this happened, so our kids are in their 20s now. They've both moved out and keep in touch with both their mom and I, but they take their mother's words with a grain of salt because she once lost patience with their father, who counted on her to remain his wife and be there through the good times and the bad, for better or for worse. All things considered, I can't help but be grateful because I have more than I ever expected to have as a child. I have a big family with my adult children, second wife, and stepchildren. My wife never expected to remarry after losing her husband, but when we met it was like fate knew we were two broken families that could combine into one. OP. I am so happy to hear that since this terrible experience you've remarried and have a big happy family. Your story is a testimony to men out there right now, hurting from a past relationship. Women need men, so they should be treating them with the same care and understanding as anyone else. If one woman gets you down or does something unforgivable, set her free and continue on your journey without her, even if she tries coming back. We are each on our own journey of healing and maturing. Never judge a book by its cover and always be quick to understand that someone may not be as they seem, or may be experiencing something that you can't relate to, because you haven't had the same experience. I am proud of you for following through with divorcing your wife, even though you counted on this family to always be there. You had to be exceptionally strong to know that you could get through this, and it was the right thing to do. Only then can you be ready for a mature woman that knows how to respect and honor a man. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened.